All right, so we got the harmless Iranian regime starting to strike places inside of Israel and other allied territories. We're going to see exactly how many people and exactly where they're striking.
Yeah, the air raid sirens have just started again here in Jerusalem. We've been getting a series of alerts about incoming attacks coming into Israel across a huge expanse of this land, north, south, towards Tel Aviv. I've just had a message saying missiles reported on their way into the West Bank of Israel, which is, of course, occupied territory, Palestine, as seen by most governments. Now, about 25 minutes ago, we saw a series of intercepts in the sky above Jerusalem, booms. We just had a large boom coming from over in that direction, and these sirens suggest that they feel that there are missiles coming over in this direction. Now, generally, Iran would not be targeting Jerusalem for the reason that area over there, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is one of the holiest sites in Islam. But there are missiles that will come over here. In fact, if you look there, that is the side of a missile intercept. So that is an Iranian missile that has been flown across here, probably towards a different target, but which has been intercepted by Israeli air defense. And that is what we are seeing in the skies above Jerusalem, are the booms of intercepts of missiles in this sky. The situation here, oh, that's another loud boom you're hearing there of a missile being intercepted here. The situation here, of course, has escalated very, very rapidly this morning.
Again, this is a lot of strikes happening to Israel from Iran, which is covering an entire country just to get there. And this is the same instance that a lot of people are telling people that they're not in danger, but then here they are hearing literal interceptions and explosions in the sky, telling them that they are in danger, which is why the opposition that are pro-Iranian, pro-killing protesters, pro-slaughtering the innocent are always going to say that the victims are the people that can't fight back, but clearly can get missiles across the fucking like countries. And those countries will continuously have to intercept them and then pretend like they're again doing the good thing, which they can't, because everyone always assumes they're the worst, which is why in Israel a lot of people are going to have to always take on the burden of being seen as bad guys while they're on the constant defense, while being attacked by the Iranian proxies and the Iranian ballistic missiles continuously, while nobody is really getting down to the nitty gritty of everything, which is just the fact that they are in a constant war between race of the Jewish people and the people of Iranian Arabic descent, which of course isn't even supported by all Arabs, which is why this fight is happening between two of the most tense countries which have nuclear weapons potentials. But Iran itself was offered the deal so that they can still enrich uranium and still push their civilization with energy, and as well as reserves that will help add to their engineering, their science, their pioneering, and their building of their infrastructure. However, they turned it down for the concept or the conceptualization of constantly having the threat of death on Israel and anyone else, while simultaneously presenting themselves as people who cannot even hold their own civilians accountable, since they just kill them and execute them in order to maintain them. And so if you have a society that kills and executes its prisoners, take over Israel, then what do you think they're going to do to the prisoners of war of Israel that are all Jewish? It's not hard to put together that a country that is uncivil is going to continuously be uncivil, and the one that is civil, that is still called disgusting or genocidal, is still less genocidal than the country they're fighting, which is, of course, surviving your environment.
From 8 o'clock to that 3¼ hours ago, when the first siren sounded, that was a preemptive siren to warn Israelis that military action was imminent and that they were likely to be asked to take shelter. And then just 3 hours later, we now know that Israel and the United States coordinated a military attack. There's another intercept that you just see there. You see that large puff of grey smoke? That is the scene of another interception. Very large boom we've just heard in the skies above us, above Jerusalem. And so this is the cacophony, and that's another trail there, and you can hear a jet flying overhead. It's a cloud cover over Jerusalem today. You see that large plume of smoke there from another interception. This is the soundtrack to Israel at the moment, and that's another element to it. If just that chiming sound you can hear is the alert that is now played out on mobile phones and devices across this country. That is a warning that is sent out on apps on people's phones and other devices, warning them of incoming missiles and telling them to take shelter. As you can see, my team and I are all in protective equipment. That's a very, very loud intercept there. That doesn't feel as if that one is too far away. These are some of the loudest booms and interceptions that we've heard so far this morning. And Israel is a tense country right now. In fact, I'm looking there. There is a plume of smoke that is...
See, like a lot of these missiles are hitting the territory. So the concept of Iran being defenseless is not the same as Palestine. These people were launching rockets that are hitting the heart of Tel Aviv, and they are getting counter-operated continuously. These missile silos open up out of nowhere and shoot out ballistic missiles going Mach 15, like the Fatwa that they claim is going to be able to carry a military payload of nuclear weapons. Every single one of these interceptions could be a death and destruction of 0.25% of at least the population, even if it was intercepted above its skies. That plume of smoke could be a nuclear payload that just eviscerated that entire neighborhood. The entire concept is understanding how physics works and nuclear physics works, so that when you know the interception isn't exactly 100%, it's not trying to brag, but trying to let people know that Iran seriously does not need a nuclear payload when they're striking the heart of Tel Aviv and exploding rockets over their heads, because again, they are the ones that are going to prove that they can completely destroy the country. And of course, Israel has had nuclear weapons and nuclear support for a while and still has not resorted to them, but the people that say a couple minutes to Tel Aviv and threatening nuclear weapons and nuclear death are still going to be the ones that are historically going to be careless with their weapons, which is why they got offered one of the most lucrative deals possible to enrich uranium to the exact measures they wanted, just not so they can build a payload for nuclear weapons, which again is going to repeat itself, because if they wanted to build nuclear weapons, the international message now, because of this conflict, is going to be keep it secret, which everyone already knows, which is why this is going to be a little bit of a backlash, because the nuclear weapons are going to be kept secret, but also the support of people saying no war is going to support nuclear weapons, which is ironic, because it'll eventually lead to the support of nuclear warfare, which nobody supports, which then puts people in a pivot as such as North Korea, where North Korea has nuclear weapons and nothing's wrong, but Iran can't have nuclear weapons, but North Korea threatens to kill people all the time, which is why the continuation of the nuclear weapon development would rob them of any trade deals or sanctions, which of course they're already being sanctioned and already robbed of their dignity. So again, their help with China and Russia and their alliance indicates more of a World War III than necessarily discussing about the nuclear deal as a whole, since the entire deal is with the Shahed drones funding Russia and China helping Iran with their nuclear resources, as well as the resources strategically, which the nuclear resources aren't directly supported. However, you can still support the logistics that can get those nuclear weapons armed. And therefore you have the alliance against America, which is the Eastern Alliance, versus the Western Alliance, where the disarmament of Iran doesn't necessarily have to always be toward the Iranian nuclear weapons, but can also be toward the Shahed drone production, the manufacturing of weapons and ammo and resources that are now currently killing Ukrainians en masse, that a lot of people want that war to end as well. So if you want to end the war in Ukraine and Russia, you have to go toward the source, which is going to be China, but you don't have the reason to attack China, since that's the reason Taipei and Taiwan, or Taipei or Taiwan, whichever one you discuss, is currently being contentious. However, China is wise enough not to go into a full-scale war, so they use Iran as a shield, and the Iranian people are pushing logistics with weapons and arms and everything else under the sun in order to establish themselves as an intellectual people that are not having to get into direct warfare through, since China is a communist country and non-interventionalist, they're going to sit back and use their pawns or their proxies, such as the people who can manufacture and produce anyone who is willing to go into a hot war, which is why this war is sure an idea of against nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction, but is still an overall alliance of people who are at war with the United States of America and NATO, which is why no one wants to go to war. No one likes war. However, this war itself if not taken serious, would put nuclear payloads into every single person's hand that's part of that alliance, and then pushes the idea that, again, if they have nuclear weapons as an ally, but they're not willing to use those nuclear weapons to secure the security of Iran, then it shows proof of the weakness of the alliance that they have on the East Coast, or I shouldn't say the East Coast, but the Eastern Hemisphere of the Earth, because a lot of those people on the East don't even support Iran in and of itself, because its culture is such a culture clash that they're going to have to see if they're even willing to be supported by their own people, which is why this is a big Darwin test, or a test to see if people are even worthy of having nuclear weapons if they don't even like their own government, which is why the government killing protesters was a setback in their league, because now they look genocidal and hate-filled toward the Iranian people. However, they're banking on the idea that so many Muslims were genocided by the idea of the Western imperialists or the U.S. Army killing a bunch of Muslims over time and martyrs, that they're going to establish themselves as people who hate America no matter what. So they were banking on the idea that killing protesters would make people angry, sure, but people hate America a lot more, and therefore they're going to wait for America to try and play hero again, try to understand the dynamics of the Arabian people or the people of that of Islam, and they're going to bank off that in order to push for a more just idea, which is justice against the imperialist invasion, which they had with the Lebanon invasion, which they pushed the Israelis out along with the Americans, but the Americans were pushing more a peace project rather than an allied fight in most of the war, which is why this is more of a World War III situation, since the entire continents are at war, including the war against Venezuela, which is a technical advancement of this warfare that can actually escalate to nuclear, because the nuclear arms themselves will not be used in order to devastate all humanity. They're going to go to the most inhumane and uncivil people in order to maintain them, whether Western or Eastern, in order to establish a civil ideology across the world.
Is just rising from a scene just, well, that is not far away from us at all. The smoke that you can see rising there, we don't know what has caused that, but that is a venue down there which is used as a concert venue over the course of summer here in the heart of Jerusalem, and there is now smoke pouring out from that. That is just in the shadow of the old city of Jerusalem. That is extraordinarily near to some of the holiest sites in Christianity and Islam. We'll find out what has happened there, but that is smoke pouring out from there, and that followed on, as you heard, from the sound of intercepts here in the skies above Jerusalem.
Wow, we're living in one of the most historical moments in our time. This is the beginning of what we could call the new civilization that is founding itself on the alliance of the Western Hemisphere so that they can maintain peace on the Middle East, which of course has been a mission for a long time. However, if you understand the proxy wars that were happening, this is going to be a continuation. However, we have gotten rid of the proxies and now are striking at the heart, which they have said historically was always Iran. So this is a war that's been long overdue. It's been stacking up for quite a while, even before I was alive. So this war has been getting continuously built up to this moment. This isn't just a surprise war. This is the war they were scared about Afghanistan training terrorists in. This is the war they were scared about Iraq in. They were scared about weapons of mass destruction, chemical warfare. They were scared about all these ideologies that were all supported by the Iranian regime, which is why a lot of this is going to be pushed continuously. Even if you think the people that are pushing against the war are pushing against it are technically still on the side of the American governments. So it's going to go continuously. They're pushing for this war against Iran, since Iran would be like the brain operation of the Middle East that fights against Western imperialism, and every other country that doesn't fight against Western imperialism is probably seen as a proxy war with controlled opposition. So it's going to be a very interesting fight.